Well, there seems to be a little bit of a discrepancy, or I'll just say some disagreement between if the Bronco 2.7 liter takes 6 or 7 quarts. I put 7 quarts in. I've done hundreds of oil changes on Mustangs that I own and Ford Expedition and Toyotas and different vehicles I've owned. And usually I look what's in the manual and I stick it in, I check it, it's on point. The next day I check it and we're fine. Well, with this, I dumped in 7 quarts. And my manual said 7 quarts. I guess the older manuals do, I think, and I'm over full. So we'll have more of a discussion on this in a moment. Unless you want to be like me, I would suggest putting 6 quarts in first, see where you sit, like many have suggested. Otherwise, you're going to get a mighty vac or a vac system. I got to suck a quart out. I'm going to try this with a dipstick. It should work, dipstick hole. I really don't feel like removing that partial skid protection again in the plug and keeping oil all over. So we're just going to suck a liter out this way. So here we go. So here we are, pumping it out. This does feed down through there. Doesn't this look like fun? This would be a first for me. I've never removed oil from a fresh oil change, but I'm going to suck a half quart out or a quart out, and then we'll retest it. So anyway, to make a long story short, 6 or 7 quarts. It sounds like 7 quarts was recommended. Then they went to, many people are able to get 7 quarts out, but from the factory, it sounds like they might even put 6 or 7 quarts in. But as time has gone on, it seems like they're going towards 6 quarts. Ford has made a statement that 7 quarts won't hurt it, so I don't feel like I've damaged my vehicle any, but it just makes sense to me to go with what the dipstick says, which will probably put me close to 6 to 6.5 quarts. If you let it drain a while, you might be able to get 7 quarts out of it. I let mine drain for, probably 15 minutes yesterday. I just didn't spend, got to where it was kind of going to a slow drip, and I just put the plug back in and refilled. So you might be able to get 7 quarts out. So I guess what I would suggest, to make a long story short, not to complicate it, put in 6 quarts, start it up. You could even push on the brake and the gas pedal to the floor at the same time, turn it over so it won't start, to prime it, and then start it after that. Let it sit for 10 to 15 minutes and then recheck to see where you're sitting. As many have said, it's easier to put oil in than it is to remove it like this. So I thought I would show what I'm doing here for the sake of the demonstration. We're getting there. But anyway, you don't want to have to do what I'm doing now. It doesn't look like a lot of fun. Not terrible, but there's other things I would rather do. Just think, this could be you if you put in 7 quarts. No, and just to be clear, I don't feel like 7 quarts is going to grenade the motor. It would probably be fine, but save yourself a little trouble. Start with 6. My guess is 6.5 might be about right. And I think we're getting close. This little vacuum actually is working really good. We've got about a half quart out. There's a liter there. So I'll probably pull a little more out and I'm going to stop. I haven't used this before, so this is new. I could always put it back in if I needed to. But anyway, just some thoughts here. There's also a little bit of argument on this. This is stacked with 24 plus or minus 2 Newton meters. Some say to go to 18. I think with this, it's seated in real easy. So I would say just 18 to 24 Newton meters is fine if you're torquing this down. So just a few things I learned with this oil change. Thought I would pass it on. There's also been some discussion about dipsticks, about maybe there's some dipsticks revisions on this, but for right now, I think that in summary, I'm just going to say that if you put in 6 quarts, and then see where it's at, start it, let it sit for 15 minutes. You could even check it the next day when it's cold, let the oil drain back down to the pan. That would be my suggestion. I think next time I'm going to put 6 in, I'll do that, and then who knows, maybe we'll end up with maybe 6, 6.5 or something. But just a little update. The rest of my video, my board will say 7 quarts. on my little board, but I think I just wanted to put this at the front end of my video before we do the oil change. The oil change on this is great. It's super easy. This is a great motor. Definitely keep clean oil in it. And so let's get started with the oil change now. Okay, so I now have re-added, I sucked about a quart and a half out, just kind of was more on accident than on purposeful. And checked the oil, and I was a little low on this dipstick. I was kind of, after sucking a quart and a half out, I was kind of down here. You got the hole here, and you got the hash marks, and you got the overfull here. And so I went ahead and I added back to where basically I was at 6 quarts, maybe, basically 6 quarts, and now I'm back at kind of the top end of this where my thumb is, and so that's what I'm going to go with for now. And so that's roughly 6 quarts there. I'm not saying that if those of you who put in more, you're wrong. I'm just saying this is what I'm going to do, and I'm going to keep an eye on it. Like Ford said, I think you can put more than, I think you can put 7 quarts in here and be okay, but I have a feeling 6.5 is probably where this is going to settle in. So just wanted to put this in at the front of the video. So let me know your thoughts. What do you guys think? I saw there were some people that put a lot of thought into this. One fellow even had 2 different pans from, I think, maybe a 3 liter and the 2.7, and there's lots of theories as to maybe there should have been a different dipstick that was included with the Bronco, but it's just interesting to me. What do you think? Hate to start this up and get everybody all excited, but 6 quarts, 7 quarts, looks like Ford has now said that all 2.7 liters should get 6 quarts. What do you think? Go ahead and put your thoughts in there. So, love the Bronco. I think it's awesome, very capable, but this has been, this whole 6 or 7 quart thing, I have to admit, kind of was shocking to me. So anyway, keep watching. I go through the rest of the oil change, but I just thought this whole 6 or 7 quart thing was interesting to me. And then when you can get 7 quarts in, if you feel it drain long enough, just, I'll be curious to hear everybody's thoughts. But for now, I think I'm going to put 6 quarts in, and then we won't have to get a vacuum and suck a little out. Wasn't terrible, but I don't want to do that again. All right. Have an awesome day and enjoy the video. Okay, so we're going to do a Bronco oil change for the 2.7 liter Bronco. You can see the Bronco there. It's up on a lift. You do not need a lift. This thing is so high, just from the factory, you can get under here easy. I've done it. This is the first time I've used a lift oil change, or last time I just got under there, no ramps, nothing, and could change it. So you don't need a lift, but for the sake of the video, I'm doing a lift. You need 7 quarts of oil, 530 weight. I suggest synthetic. Use the oil that you've had good luck with. I've used Valvoline in the past. I'm using Mobile One today. I've used a number of oil brands in the past that worked fine. Just use a good quality synthetic oil that you've had good luck with. I do recommend changing oil reasonably frequently on this because you have a twin turbo setup. Even the 4-cylinder is a turbo, so oil's going to those bearings. There's lots of heat associated with turbos. Plus, this is a high-performance engine, so change your oil often. How often? I put here every 3,000 to 5,000 miles, every 6 to 12 months. You can decide what you want to do. In this particular application, it's been about 12 months for me because I've only gone roughly a couple thousand miles, so it's not my daily driver. But if you got 3,000 to 5,000 miles in 6 months, I would change it at 6 months. Or if the car was sitting outside, building up moisture, short trips, then maybe every 6 months wouldn't be a bad idea. With the turbos and the variable valve timing, the cam phasers on these things, you want clean oil, you don't want dirty oil. If you have clean oil, I think these are really reliable motors. I think if you don't change the oil, being a high performance twin turbo motor, I think you'll be putting a new turbo on at 80 to 120,000 miles. But anyway, 7 quarts of your oil. You need a FL2062A Motorcraft oil filter. Looks something like this. Just kind of a cartridge type filter. And this is such an easy thing to change the oil on. It's got the cartridge on top of the motor. no reason you wouldn't want to do this yourself. So easy. 4 15mm bolts. Just need a socket. You don't need this thing. This just makes it faster. You could use just a regular ratchet. For the cartridge on the top, you need a 27mm socket, or you could use a 1 1/16 inch socket, so a 27mm or a 1 1/16 inch socket. And then a funnel is helpful just to get the oil in the engine without spilling all over. I use this funnel. It just screws actually into the oil cap for Ford vehicles, and it's just for Ford or Mazda's, kind of this no spill funnel. It says it's item number 56021. And anyway, I just use this because it screws directly into the oil cap and indexes in, and then you don't make a big mess. But you can see I have standard funnels down here. You could use any standard funnel and you would be fine. But I never understood people where they'll not use a funnel, you spill it all over the top of the engine, and you have oil, collecting dust and making a mess. Just do it right, make it clean. Just as kind of a footnote, when I had this Bronco up on the stand here, I inspect it for the frame for rust, and if I find rust, which it really I found very little, I'll just use some Rust-Oleum, paint on here. You can use a fluid film if you're in the salt belt or the rust belt, and really coat that frame. But here in Oregon, we don't have salt, but we just have a lot of water. So for our application here, just keeping on top of the rust works well. But anyway, while you're under the vehicle, even if I weren't on a lift, I would look around under here just to inspect things to see if I found anything unusual going on. So the first step is we're going to remove these 4 15mm bolts here on the skid plate. And we're just going to take those off. First couple, you don't have to be that concerned. I don't want this to hit me on the head, so I'm going to actually loosen these up. Let's take this one off. I've got one more over here. And then this just slides backwards and out. And as you can see, I did have this out on the sand, so there's lots of sand. We'll get that cleaned out before we put that back together. Okay, now if you look under here, very, very easy. We have the oil plug right here. I have a new one that you could put in, and this is just going to turn to the left, and these little things will unclip out of here. You just can actually twist it with pliers, or I have no trouble doing it with my hands, and I'm not, wouldn't consider myself that strong at all, so I'm sure you can do it. So anyway, that's what we're going to do next, is just let's get the oil draining. You can open the filler up top and it'll come out a little quicker. Honestly, I like it to come out a little slower so that it's easier for me to catch it. But and I did warm the vehicle up briefly before I drain the oil. That's something you can do as well. So let's get this oil draining. Okay, I'm using gloves. Gloves are a good thing to use. Costco, at least for the time being, sells gloves for a while they were in short supply, but Harbor Freight carries gloves. This is what I'm using to catch oil. Is if you want to take the oil to your local recycling center, or sometimes garages take it, mechanics garages take it. For years, I just used this thing. I mean, I've done way more oil changes without a lift and with just this than I have with this setup. So I guess I just like to point that out. You don't need all this stuff. I'm doing it for the sake of filming today. I've used this for hundreds of oil changes, but wearing gloves. So the first step is, and again, you could open the oil cap up above if you wanted to, but the first step is we're just going to loosen up this yellow plug here, and we'll do our best to catch it. I've caught it, and that was just with pretty light pressure, and we'll see how we do here. We did okay. I was lucky. I wish Ford used a regular bolt for this. I mean, this is okay. I mean, I haven't had any real trouble with it, but it's all right. I would rather have a bolt, but I've never had one pull out. I had a Ford Raptor and GT 350 and other vehicles that use this, and they do fine. I haven't ever lost one. Haven't had many leaking issues, so I guess it's fine. Probably want to replace this. It's got a little O-ring here. Wouldn't hurt to put a new one of those in. I think you could reuse them here and there, but for the cost of it, you're probably better off replacing it. And then shop rags are good to have. I use the Costco shop rags. They're easy. You can get an AutoZone or Costco. Just the Scott's rags. They're nice. You can wipe things down. So when you're under here, once this is done draining, I'll wipe all this off. I'll get it nice and clean. And just let that go till it kind of quits draining. And then in the meantime, we could actually, if I didn't have this on a lift, I would go up top and I would swap the filter out. But we're going to let that drain until it pretty much has stopped. So, 10 minutes, give or take a little bit. Do it till you're satisfied. If you have something else you could do, you could always pull a plug and walk away. Just make sure you don't, of course, start the vehicle. Sometimes I'll even set something, leave the hood open, put the keys somewhere hard to find. You don't want to start your engine with the oil out of it. I've never done that, but I've always thought that would be such a horrible thing. All right, so we'll let that drain. We'll replace the plug, and then we'll go up top and swap out the oil filter. So I did find a new plug with a new O-ring, so I just went ahead and put some silicone grease on there. Ford doesn't recommend that, but it's just anything to just help this slide in there. But I just use motor oil. I just had some of this Silglide stuff that's safe for O-rings or any rubber. But just put some motor oil on there so this doesn't bind. There's lots of oil coming out. And so, you wouldn't have to make a big deal of that. I change my oil frequently enough. I'm not always that concerned about getting every little last drop out of there. It's still coming out at a pretty good clip. I'll wait till it's dripping. We'll give it a few more minutes. All right, so we're gonna go ahead and put this in, have a little oil on there like we mentioned before. I took a clean rag and I kind of have wiped out around here and on the inside of this. And you could wait longer to where there's no oil coming out of there, but I'm just kind of needing to get moving. And I do frequent enough oil changes. I'm not worried about a little oil in there. So you start here, you seat it, and then it just clicks in. And when this tab hits that little mark right there, that little dog ear hits that black thing, that's it. So I guess this is pretty easy. So I did install a new plug, and I'm just kind of taking any oil, and it didn't get on the frame. If it had, I would have wiped all this off, and that's all there is to it. And then we'll just reinstall the skid plate. So before I go up top, let's go ahead and get that skid plate reinstalled. We'll do that next. So I spent literally, I think, a minute, and I just took one of my old oil rags that I had in there and I brushed all the sand out of this. And it actually looks pretty good. Went ahead and I did the other side. So, when you got things apart, why not just clean them up a little bit? It really didn't take that much effort. And now when I'm installing a clean part, not something that was full of sand. So anyway, just a little tip, when you have it apart, take like literally 1 minute and just wipe it out. You just have to index these underneath here between I guess this skid plate, the real skid plate, and this kind of body protection. You could leave this off till it's filled full of oil, so you could make sure that the plug isn't leaking, but I felt really good. I use a new plug. I don't see any problems. And then we're just going to replace these other 2 bolts back here and snug those up. You always start these by hand. I started these by hand. You don't want to cross thread these, and then I'll just zip them in here. But I'm not going to torque them all the way down right now. Then we'll just take the ratchet and snug this up the rest of the way by hand. And these, you don't have to go crazy with these. Just where they bottom out and snug them. You can look up the torque spec on there, but they're big bolts. They're not gonna strip, but I wouldn't. Don't tighten them like you're tightening a lug nut. Just bottom them out until they stop and then call it good. And I'm not using all my strength here. There's a point where they just stop and you stop too. Okay, that's all there is to that. Okay, we have a vehicle on the ground. We're going to use a 27 millimeter or 1 1/16 socket. We have this cartridge filter right here. It's so easy to get. I mean, look, it's right on top of the motor. I mean, it couldn't be easier to get at. Really, really nice. And so it's just a matter of putting this on here, and it should fit really snug, and that just screws off. And I have not had this puking a bunch of oil around the motor. I'm watching from the side and I do not see a bunch of oil coming out, so let's remove this, set this over here. And that's just going to pull up along with the filter. And once again, there wasn't any oil that drained out of that. It's all kind of gone back into the motor. And now it's just going to be a matter of changing this O-ring and these two O-rings. And notice I put a couple of paper towels here, shop towels, to catch the oil. So we're going to take this over to the workbench, and we're going to pull this filter out and change it out. And like I said, change out these O-rings, and then it's just a matter of putting it back together. Now, always look down in here, make sure that everything's clean. We don't want anything to fall down to the motor. So just, I'll probably take a new shop towel and wipe around in here. You just don't want any debris to fall in there, because that would go into your motor. So let's go ahead and get this ready for reinstall. Okay, so now all we need to do is get this ready. When you get this Motorcraft filter, it comes with the filter. It comes with 3 O-rings, 1 for here and 2 for here. So pretty simple. First step, I'm going to take this little one off and swap that out. You could use a screwdriver for this just as well. And it's just a matter of prying that little guy off. Okay, and old one over there. Let's go ahead and put the new one on. Some things just like to be just difficult enough to make you work a little bit. Okay, after a brief struggle, I got this one on. It wasn't that bad. I just had to pry it down with something besides my fingers. And then, we can pull this filter out, and this is nice and clean in here, so I'm just going to go ahead and put the new one back in. It's not directional, so you can just put that one on in there, and it'll seat down. And then it's just a matter of, let's swap these off now. And I'm just going to use this little pick to get under there. These seem a lot easier to pull off than the other thing, so we'll pull off both of these. I think the original ones were red. You can still see some of the red residue in there. And then we'll just go ahead and put these new ones on. So we'll go ahead and do that now. I'm just going to move this on to the next one. Good, and then we'll put this other one on. Okay, now one thing I noticed about this oil filter housing, these composite housings are actually really tough as long as you don't over torque them. If you over torque them and you break them when you're installing them, that's, I think, when it can be a real problem. But I don't have any problem with this housing as long as you treat it right. I think it's going to treat you right. Okay, we've got this seated in all the way around. This is seated in all the way around. Let's take some oil and put on these O-rings here. Okay, let's put one on the other one. And these threads, let's get lots of oil on there. And then on this housing, it does have the torque spec written on it. It says 24 Newton meters, plus or minus 2 Newton meters. So I guess we're talking about anywhere 24 to 26. So 24 plus or minus 2 Newton meters. So that's the torque. It probably wouldn't be a bad idea if you're unfamiliar with this to get your torque wrench out and to use that. I've done this before, and I just know when this bottoms out, I stop. I don't keep going on it, yarding on it. And today it came off really easy. So, okay, we have our 3 new O-rings. We have our filter in. It's bottomed out. When you first put the filter on there, it kind of stops about right here. So you just have to kind of twist it and make sure that seats all the way down. And we have oil on these. So this is ready to go back in. Let's go back over and install this. And so I've already previously wiped all this out. It's with a clean rag. It's nice and clean. And we're just going to put this in here and kind of seat that in. And I'm going to use my 27 millimeter socket here. I put an extension on, then it clears all the motor parts, wires and intake and things. And now I'm just gonna, this is where you go 24 Newton meters plus or minus 2 Newton meters. And you can see on the side over here where it's gradually seating in on the motor over here. It's kind of seating in little by little as I screw this down. And you can feel when it just kind of stops, and you can see it actually where it seats in there. And so this is okay. So now we have this torque down to 24 Newton meters plus or minus 2 Newton meters, which if you don't have a torque wrench, you just slightly seat it down like that much muscle. That's all it needs. It does not need a lot because it's got 2 big O-rings. If you torque this thing down like you're used to with the old oil filter, then you're gonna have problems. If you just lightly seat it in, you're gonna be fine. So now you get your funnel. I'm going to use I call it my Ford funnel. And you take where this oil filler cap is, really easy, right on top. That's why I love this motor. Fill it, change the filter, nothing to it. You can see this thing indexes right in there. Gotta love this filter. And then it indexes in there with an O-ring. It's got this O-ring in here, so it doesn't leak. It's got an O-ring right there. And you just index that thing in there, and now we'll just fill it up with oil. I always keep my filters in a Ziploc baggie or box so that they stay clean. And now we're going to put 7 quarts of 530 oil. It says 530 weight. Let's use what the Ford engineers say, recommend. So we're just going to fill that with 7 quarts of oil. So I'm just going to put my 530 weight oil. Look at how this matches. 530, 530, and we're just going to go ahead and put 7 quarts in there just like that. Nothing to it. I love this funnel because you don't have to worry about it dripping down all over in here. Use a funnel. You don't want to get oil all over the top of the motor and collect dust and debris and all that. Okay, so we're just going to do that 6 more times for a total of 7 quarts. We're going to put this plug back in, and then we're just going to hit the oil reset. Okay, now we're going to just start the Bronco, let it run for maybe 30 seconds, circulate the oil through the oil filter and the motor, and then we'll check the oil and reset the oil minder light. I do like these Redline struts. I used to have to use this prop rod. That was really easy to install those. I have a video on that, but it makes it so much easier when you're changing oil. Just kind of a side note on that. So now we're just starting the vehicle. I'm gonna let it run 30 seconds or so. We can set the oil reminder light reset while we're doing that. So let's go ahead and do that now. I'll use reset trip 2 and make that my oil change interval. So that way I have that. So I just reset trip 2, and now let's reset the oil reminder light. Okay, so to set the oil reminder light, you have to kind of just go into your menu using your OK and back switch. So I just kind of am toggling up and down here, and so I'm going to go down here to where it says settings, hit OK,
We're going to go to oil life, hit OK. 6% remaining. For me, that was just time because it's been almost a year. And then we're just going to hold the OK here and keep that depressed to reset it. See, it's resetting, set to 100%, and then we'll go back out. So just a footnote here. You don't want to have this going too long. Between oil changes, 6 to 12 months, and then anywhere around 5,000 miles, about 3 to 5,000 miles. It's up to you, but I think for engines this complicated, that's a good idea. Let's go ahead and shut the engine off, and then we're going to shut the engine off, and we'll go ahead and just see where it's falling on the dipstick. So make sure you have your oil fill plug back in. You can see it's in. Here's our dipstick back here. We're going to pull that out, wipe it off, put it back in, and see where we're falling on the dipstick. So pull this out. We're going to wipe it off. Clean shop towel, of course. You don't want to use something dirty on something that's going in the engine. I know you guys know that, and then we're just going to put it in there. And we're going to fish it on all the way down. Fish it all the way down. I like the big dipstick, yellow dipstick. Can't hardly miss that. Okay, and then we'll see where we're at. Oh, we're at a good spot. We're up here to the upper part of this dot. You can see there's hash marks here. You want to be on those hash marks. I'll wipe it off. So you want to be on these hash marks here, but you don't want to be above this. That would be overfull, and we were right there. So we're good. So let's go ahead and, put this back in. We're done. We could look under the vehicle for any oil leaks, and I haven't found any. And our oil filter cartridge looks good. I don't see any leaks over here, and I did not tighten that down hard. So once again, I know I sound like a broken record, but this does not need to go crazy tight. If you do go tight on this cartridge, I think it could create trouble. But such a nice motor to change oil on. Oil fill here, oil check, your cartridge right there, the fill plugs, or the drain plugs, easy to get to. There's no reason that you can't do this yourself, but on these 2.7 liters, well, anything with a turbo, I don't care what motor it is. Today's engines have turbos, cam phasers, and any of that stuff gets much wear on it. It's kind of a nightmare, and it's expensive, so change your oil, pretty easy. Don't be afraid of it, especially this motor where everything's so accessible. Very easy. Well, have a great day, and keep driving.